High fly ball into right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the roof. Goodbye, home run. Mattingly. Tucker waits one. Deep left field. Down the line. That ball is out of here. Out of here. He's a dog. And the legend grows.
Welcome back to another episode of Tablesetters covering all things baseball. As always, Steve, joined my tag team partner, Devin. What's up, dude?
What's going on, man? I'm happy to be here as always. I'm always excited to record tonight. A little extra excited because, well, first of all, third episode in 3 days here. We dropped 2 the other day. And we've done a lot of team-centric episodes here for Major League Baseball. I think 17 of them at this point. But this is the first time we're doing a college team-centric episode with the college season starting. And it just so happens to be my alma mater. So extra excited for this one.
So as Devin said, today we open the show with our guest, head baseball coach at the University of Delaware, Greg Mamula. Coach Mamula has just began his third season as the head coach of the Fightin Blue Hens, and we're honored that he's taken some time out of his busy schedule to join us tonight. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me and for this opportunity, guys.
So, Greg, you're only the 4th manager in the University of Delaware baseball history. It kind of reminds me of the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching tree. Tell us about, first of all, your road to Delaware. I know there was one stop there prior, but your other stops as well, and how special it is for you to have that position.
Yeah. So this will be or is my 25th year of coaching college baseball. I got into coaching right after my playing career ended in college, which tells you about my ability level that, it ended at college, but played at St. Bonaventure University, knew I wanted to coach, and started as a graduate assistant at Shippensburg University, a little Division II school in Pennsylvania. From there, got hired to be the recruiting coordinator at Delaware. So I was at Delaware for 5 years, and then got my first head coaching job at Westchester University, another Division II school in Pennsylvania. Was there for 3 years, left to become an assistant at the University of Cincinnati. Was there 4 years, left Cincinnati to go to Florida Atlantic, and was the recruiting coordinator, hitting coach at Florida Atlantic for 7 years, and then was fortunate to get this job, as you guys said, 3 years ago. So just starting my third season here at Delaware. So been all over the place. Wife, kids hate me, moved them all over the country, but we're in a good spot now.
So I'm curious, between your first time at Delaware and now, what are the biggest differences you've seen as far as, it could be facilities, the recruiting process? What are the biggest differences, if any, since the first time you were there?
No, the athletic department is completely transformed. I was gone for roughly 20 years. And back then I joke, but there's some seriousness to it. When we would have a staff meeting, it would just be coaches and 3 or 4 administrators. Now when there's an all-staff meeting, there's 200 and some people there. So way more support administration now than there was. We have it all: dietitians, sports psychologists, strength coaches, just on and on, all the support for the athletes. So the athletic department completely changed, and the facility upgrades, mainly the student athlete academic center, the weight room, the student athlete cafeteria, just, the amenities that we have for our student athletes, it's come full circle for sure.
So there's this video actually that you mentioned that Backside Ground Balls Media posted, and I was doing my research on, and they take you through, it's about a 15-minute video where they're going through the facility and showing just that, where there's the hot and cold tubs, the nutrition. And I'm telling you guys, go out and check it out. Mams is not joking around here. This is something that is on the level of a professional team. It is fantastic what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, no doubt. A lot, made a great commitment to athletics at Delaware. And as you guys probably know, this upcoming summer, the football program moves to FBS, and we're all moving to the Conference USA, so taking a step forward into the big boys of college football and, some other sports with Conference USA.
So last year was a step in the right direction for you guys. 31-26 overall, 15-9 in your conference. The CAA, which was good for 4th place, So those are all best since 2017. It was the second straight year you guys made the CAA tournament, and you made it all the way to the semis. Delaware ranked first in the CAA in runs scored, second in home runs and walks. In the field, you made the fewest errors of any team in the conference. 6 players were named all CAA. So before we look forward to 2025 and the season that had just begun, let's take a look backward at your thoughts on the last season.
No, you said it well and did your homework, Steve. It was a step in the right direction. A really talented offense and experienced offense and defense. And really that's what carried us. We averaged over 8 runs a game, mediocre to below average on the mound last year. So we had to be good offensively and defensively to win baseball games. But it was just a really good group. Unfortunately, we lost 5 everyday position players to graduation that, were a big part, obviously, of what I just spoke about offensively and defensively, and have to replace those guys heading into this season.
So you guys kicked off the season this past weekend, traveled down to FAU, a team that you're familiar with, as you just mentioned in your own career. Rough start, dropped all 3 games. You were supposed to then go to or play against Maryland in the middle of the week, and that got moved because of weather, I believe. You're going to head down to FIU now in Miami. So after a bumpy start to the season, what's your message to your players?
Yeah, no, we played awful opening weekend, and I wish I could tell you that, it was because we hadn't been outside, but the reality is we had been outside quite a bit with a turf field. We had probably scrimmaged as much as FAU, had. So that certainly wasn't an excuse. We just flat out didn't play well. So when you ask Devin, what's the message to the team, it's always about learning and growing. And there was a lot of growth that needs to happen from last weekend to this weekend for us to play winning baseball. Really just, the game sped up on us, especially in the batter's box, but did not swing the bats well at all. No discipline, just, up there swinging at everything. And on the flip side, way too many free passes, a lot of walks, a lot of hit by pitches. So those are the things that we're going to have to clean up to win baseball games.
And despite that bumpy start, and you mentioned losing 5 everyday position players to graduation, what excites you about the group you have in front of you right now and the future of this squad?
Yeah, feel like when we get going offensively, it's going to be another good offense, just, like we've had the last 2 years. But what really excites me is the depth of our pitching staff. It didn't show opening weekend, like I mentioned. We did not pitch well, but feel like we have the depth finally in place on the mound in our program to pitch it well. So that's what we haven't done the last 2 years is pitch it well enough to win a championship. I'm hopeful that this year's staff, moves us forward because of, the depth that we have in it.
So with a lot of the changes happening, this is Delaware baseball's last season as part of the aforementioned CAA. Let's talk about that conference for this year. Do you have someone who stands out, and what stands out about separating themselves from the other competition around college baseball?
Yeah, the CAA is one of those sneaky good conferences in college baseball. College of Charleston, UNC Wilmington, Northeastern, Campbell, those 4 programs have all been in the top 25 and played in the NCAA tournament in the last few years. So those are really the class of the conference. Those are the ones we've been kind of chasing, trying to catch up with. And again, I felt like we matched up with those teams offensively. We were not, we did not match up as well on the mound with them. So again, that's what we need to find out is, do we match up with those programs on the mound? And if we do, we're going to have a chance to win a championship in the conference.
So when big moves like this happen, what's the behind the scenes like with the move to Conference USA, and how does that come about? And does it change anything of significance for your day-to-day as the head coach of the Blue Hens?
Sure. The impact now is on recruiting. Every kid we are recruiting and have recruited is going to play in Conference USA. So, what's the difference? Well, we're going to have to travel a lot more.
True.
We're mainly on a bus, a lot of 5, 6, 7-hour bus rides on weekends in the CAA, whereas, Conference USA, we're going to be on planes flying all over the country. I mean, you're talking about New Mexico State, Louisiana Tech, Dallas Baptist, there's a lot of schools far away. So that's probably going to take, in some cases, a different type of personality, somebody that craves that and wants to go play on a bigger stage and doesn't mind the travel and actually probably enjoys, the travel of moving around the country and playing in a high profile baseball conference. Conference USA has finished in the top 5 in the country in RPI in years. There's been a national champ, routinely 3 teams in the NCAA tournament out of Conference USA, and a lot of really good venues that draw really well, and baseball is really important to a lot of those schools. So the recruiting piece is where the change happens. It doesn't affect our current players right now because, again, our focus is on winning the CAA this year.
It's exciting to think about, though, going to some of those bigger venues. I know as a Delaware alum, seeing that they're going to D1 in football or FBS in football was an exciting thing to think of, just because I think I'll see them on TV more often. And they've always been, even when I was there from 2004 to 2008, even though it was 1AA or FCS, whatever you want to call it, it's still a big deal, Delaware football. But to kind of be on that grander stage is exciting. And that brings me to kind of what you said about recruiting. I don't know if this changes for you going forward, but what is your number one selling point when you're trying to recruit different players?
Yeah, it's always going to be development, right? Kids want to play, or the kids we're recruiting want to play professional baseball. So they need to see a path with our staff, our facilities, our support that can get them to professional baseball. So that's going to be the sell, is that our focus is on growth and development and developing them as baseball players, as humans, but obviously simultaneously developing us as a baseball program to win baseball games. It's going to be at the top of the list, Evan.
As far as attracting the best talent goes, do you feel like do the more southern teams have a bit of an advantage in that way, or is that kind of hearsay?
In our sport, for sure, right? Like there's always going to be a percentage of kids from this part of the country that want to go play college baseball in the South. And typically Southern kids do not want to go north to play college baseball. So yeah, for sure, there's an advantage to being in the South. But I will also say that there's a lot of really good talent within a few hours of our campus. Obviously, a lot of people live within a few hours of Newark, Delaware. So there's a lot of players to pick from. And I would also tell you that the travel ball high school scene is not as organized in this part of the country and others, in terms of, like, when I was in Florida, typically all the good kids are playing on the same travel teams and the same tournaments, and the same colleges are there seeing them. Whereas kids are more spread out. There's a lot more tournaments going on this part of the country. So there's more kids that are, I don't know if anybody's hidden anymore with social media, but maybe not as well known or as seen by as many schools in this part of the country. So I feel like, we've been able to, I'm going to use the word sneak. We've been able to sneak some really good players into our program. So we have some really talented younger players that are going to be really are currently and are going to be really good players for us.
So we mentioned the offense before, and obviously stellar offense last year with the numbers we discussed, and partly due to an offensive friendly park. In that video I mentioned before, some of the wind blowing out and just conducive for offense on that turf. When you took the job, and we discussed it here, wanting to improve the pitching side of the ball, what has been your approach to that? We've seen other schools and professional teams take an approach with the analytics and the pitching labs and trying to dissect maybe arm angles. What is it like behind the scenes for Delaware looking for improving the pitching?
Yeah, we've pumped a lot of money into our pitching staff, so that's been a piece of it. Obviously, is if we want to get better on the mound, we're going to have to put more money into recruits. We've done that. We also have a really talented pitching coach, Steve. Dan Sweeney's our pitching coach. He's been at William and Mary the last 3 years. They've been amongst the best pitching staffs in the country. So fortunate to have Dan. He's really good with the analytical side, using the TrackMan that we have to help guys improve their pitches, their pitch profiles, the pitch shapes, basically how to miss barrels, is where we're at this day and age of baseball. And I feel like he's really good at that. And, we're getting guys that have good stuff and, the ability to miss barrels and get strikeouts.
So just to follow up quick on that, we saw this first opening weekend. One of the news stories we covered outside of just the upsets we saw was the exit velocity for some of the swings. Was that something in-house that you guys were seeing on your own as far as exit velocity with the ball coming off some of these bats from other schools just in general? Feels like the swings are a little bit harder nowadays.
No, our right fielder, Aaron Graber, hit the 2 hardest fair balls in college baseball last year. Hit one, I think 122, another 120 miles an hour, which we're starting to talk about, like we're getting close to Giancarlo Stanton type
for sure
numbers. I'm going to attribute it, like this is the talk of college baseball after opening weekend, the high scores. I'm going to attribute it to 3 things. Number one, I think the TrackMan that most Division I programs have in their facilities now prints out a report for the umpires on what percentage of the calls they got right. So now the umpires are trying to call a true, what I'll call major league strike zone. So hitting has become a little bit easier in college because of that. Whereas, prior to that and prior to games being on Watch ESPN in college baseball, in college, the umpires were notorious for having an extra wide strike zone, almost line to line, batter's box to batter's box. Wow. So now you've got to throw it in the strike zone, advantage hitters. The baseballs, as they are in Major League Baseball, the college baseball is a really hard baseball now. It seems like it gets harder, every year. The seams seem like they get a little bit lower every year. And as we keep changing the bats in college baseball every so many years and try to make them dead, the bat companies and the players just keep figuring out how to make them better, through various methods. And we bat test before every game, but I think the players have figured out like the exact perfect amount to use and abuse their bat to get it to perform, as good as possible. So bat, ball, and you have to throw in the strike zone now is leading to a lot of offense in college baseball. It feels like we're going to have to change one of those 3 things, I think, to even the game out a little bit.
And to be honest, that's what sells the game. I mean, we cover a lot of Major League Baseball on this show, and the one thing has always been offense draws eyes, and I think that will help the college game in the long run too. Obviously, you want pitching, and I'm partial to it as well. I love a tightly pitched gem. 1-0 games are definitely in my wheelhouse, but offense is what draws the casual fan in. I think if NCAA wants to kind of invest in that, I mean, some of these exciting players hitting long balls, like what's better than that?
I'm a hitting coach, Steve. I'm with you, man.
So one big change in college athletics that has affected it big time, really 2 things: the transfer portal and NIL. What are your thoughts on both, and how have they affected Delaware baseball?
Yeah, NIL is pretty much a non-factor for us, Delaware baseball, and I think most mid-majors. Do we have some guys making a little bit of money who are actually working for it? Yes, we do, from NIL, but it's not a major factor. The transfer portal is like, it's a real thing. We lost 2 players at the end of last year that we didn't want to leave our program. They went after greener grass, and we have brought in some really talented players as well. Our third baseman, Evan Bolden, was the Northeast Conference Player of the Year last year. So there's addition, there's a subtraction to it. Most of it, I think, is good. Not all of it is good. Nobody likes the kid who's in a really good situation, doing well, being treated right, and all of a sudden he's going to go pursue greener grasses. I think that has a little bit of a yucky feel to it for most of us, but there's a lot of kids that, their situation's not good. Maybe they're not playing enough. Maybe it's not the right situation academically, and there's a better place for them for whatever reason. And those kids, have the opportunity now to go fulfill and go play at a better place. So like everything, there's good, there's bad. It's created in baseball and certainly other sports, probably some unethical things happening behind the scenes that, don't feel right, but we're just, you have to adapt. It's one of those things that does us no good to sit and complain about it. It's about who can adapt and figure out how to use it to their advantage that's going to prosper.
With the beauty of technology, and you mentioned ESPN Plus and some of those broadcasts, it's really brought the games into everyone's living room. You have the ability to watch as much as you want if you want to sit down every weekend and watch a lot of baseball or during the week. But the college game is on front and center. We were discussing this as well on a show in the past, and it's quite clear through our social media that this game is being covered more than ever. As far as changes for you personally watching the game day to day, we're talking any facet: rules, scheduling, presentation, recruiting, etc. If you could really have carte blanche, the ability to change something in the game to maybe attract more eyes, what would it be?
Oh, Steve, I wasn't ready for this one. Give me a few seconds here to think of
Well,
to
while you
think of an
think,
answer.
though, one of the criticism Devin and I were having, some of the games, for presentation wise, they bring it. There's a lot of great presentation. It feels like you're watching a sporting event that's like equivalent to whether it be, MLB or NFL. But some of the coverage for the games, maybe for some of the mid majors, if they stepped up the production value, I think it would keep a lot of the fans engaged, because the one, I guess, standard camera that's standing over without some of the close-ups and all that, that can leave some of the casual viewers probably disenchanted with watching the product, to put it lightly.
No, I agree. The CAA is a flow sports conference. And when we moved to Conference USA, that's a Watch ESPN or ESPN Plus conference. Their standards of number of cameras and who's manning the cameras and announcers and graphics are much higher than Flow. And, I'm hopeful that, more and more conferences continue to move to Watch ESPN, ESPN Plus, because I love just to sit down at night or on the bus after one of our away games and just flick from game to game and just watch, especially the 8th and 9th innings of college baseball games are just so exciting. You just don't know what's going to happen, right? Like some of the comebacks are crazy. But I have an answer to your previous question, Steve. If I'm commissioner and I can do one thing, we are most certainly going to push the college baseball season back to warmer weather. We're not going to start playing in the middle of February. We're going to wait till like April, like Major League Baseball does, and push the season back. I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know with college athletics. As rapid as things are changing, who knows? And the reason I don't think it'll happen is because, the cost associated with keeping student athletes on campus and housing them and feeding them after school ends is too great, I think, for most institutions to occur. That gets really expensive. And many schools nowadays end the end of April, May 1st. So the later you push the college baseball season, that's just more days we've got to house and feed college baseball players. So that's why I don't think it's going to happen. But if I can make one change, that would be it.
So we saw the introduction potentially, and we see it in the Atlantic League. They try some things out. Spring training announced like automatic balls and strikes will be trialed on some point, and I think inevitably people are assuming that will happen at some point. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have any strong feelings about automatic balls and strikes, like all baseball people seem to do?
I'm in the minority, I think, with this. I would love for us to raise the strike zone at all levels of baseball, make it higher. And, we don't allow it as coaches, because as soon as an umpire calls a pitch above the belt, all the coaches and players start yelling at the umpire, and it's not worth it to them. So I would like to, like the old days, let's raise the strike zone up. I would like to see it automated if we can get it to a point where we know it's way more effective and efficient, I guess, than a human. You still need the human there, right, to run the game, to call box, to call timeouts, to eject coaches, all that stuff. So I don't like whatever the blend is, but I would love to see, that if we can get it right. And again, I know I'm in the minority. I know, I'm an older guy, but most people in my generation and older would absolutely hate it, but minority here.
You mentioned like enjoying watching other teams' games, especially the 8th and 9th inning. Did you happen to see the end of the Georgia game? I think it was last night with the whoever closed the game for Georgia kind of, I guess you could say, showed the other team up a bit.
Yeah.
I'm just curious your thoughts on that. Are you okay with that? Do you think it disrespects the game a little too much? How do you feel about that kind of showmanship?
I'll go this way, Devin. Our role in our program is we're only going to celebrate ourselves. We're going to celebrate our success. We're never going to look to put an opponent down or show an opponent up. So I'm good with, again, unlike probably many of my peers at my age, I'm good with the bat flip, the trot around the bases, as long as it's about you and your team and you're not trying to embarrass or show somebody up. I am not into, I think the pitcher you're referring to last night in Georgia was staring at the other dugout and, I don't know, sticking his tongue out or something weird was going on there at the other dugout. I don't like that. And, I think the more we can get that out of sports, because I know it's become more and more popular in all sports to show up an opponent, I think it's better for everyone.
It's a thin line, I think, because I feel like people are trying to, especially in a game like baseball, where you're trying to sell it more, as Steve kind of said before, to the casual fan. Like the traditional fans are always going to be there, but you're trying to bring in a wider audience. So for a while, that whole let the kids play kind of thing, I agree with for the most part, but that thin line, I think some people misunderstand kind of what you're saying, the celebrating your own successes in opposition to kind of rubbing it in the other team's faces. So that is a thin line. I kind of agree with what you're saying. Is that something you guys like preach often, or you just expect that out of your players from the get-go?
No, we have to talk about it because it's contrary to what they're used to in travel baseball. In the travel baseball world, you're screaming. Most teams, you're screaming at the other team. You're trying to get the other team's pitcher to throw balls. You stare their kid down when you strike him out. So it's definitely a change of habit for them. And I'm sure our players look at me like I'm some, old fuddy-duddy that doesn't know what it's about. But, I'll always believe that as long as I'm involved in competition, that this is about us. We're going to celebrate us and not, the thing I say to them all the time is dimming somebody else's light doesn't make yours shine brighter. Make your light shine bright by what you do on a field and what we do as a team.
Now, what about fan participation? It comes to mind the Texas A&M Ball 5 chant that they've kind of made a thing there. Is that something you think is fun?
Oh, yeah. I love the taunting of fans. We opened up at Ole Miss 2 years ago, and I don't know, there was like 12,000 people there, but their students are all in the outfield, and we dropped 2 fly balls. So it wasn't fun at the time, but I love that part of college baseball. Like the students in the outfield spraying beer all over each other after a home run and taunting the other team's outfielders. Like, to me, I think that stuff is such a neat part of college baseball, and the Texas A&M Ball 5 chant, all that stuff. I'm way into that for sure.
Now, the answer might reside actually in Texas A&M to this question, but I'm going to ask anyway. UD not included, your own players not included. Which player in college baseball, and maybe players, you can name a couple, impresses you the most currently on the field?
I probably shouldn't answer it this way, but I'm going to, just because he's deserving. The first baseman at UNC Wilmington is a kid by the name of Tanner Thatch. What I've seen of him the last 2 years, he's a junior this year. He's going to be a first-round pick, and he's going to be in the big leagues really quick. Physical, left-hand hitting first baseman that plays really hard. He's a really good teammate, really good kid, and the ball just jumps off his bat to all parts of the field, where he might be one of those kids that's a first-round pick this year, and depending on the organization, is up by August, September, like we've seen here recently. Like I think the talent is that good.
Steve, write it down for fantasy baseball purposes.
I am. Well, we heard his name. Ben Upton actually brought him up as well. Just someone.
Oh, he did. You're right.
He did bring him up because he feels like he has this intangible quality to him that makes him a leader that seems to blend perfectly to a major league level. So that's 2 people checking that box for the same exact name. So that has me very excited.
Yeah. The other one too, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but the freshman first baseman at Stanford that came from Japan and hit like 80 home runs in his senior year of high school in Japan. Like I got to watch a couple at bats of his. Like that looks really intriguing and exciting, and he still has, this year and 2 more years before he's draft eligible. So that's going to be fun to watch.
And then a follow-up to that, on the Major League Baseball level, if you had to pick one current player to kind of have your players model themselves off this person, and it could be in all different ways, the way they play the game, the way they respect the game, their skill set, who would that be?
I'm going to have to go with Andrew McCutchen. I'm a Pittsburgh Pirate fan, hard to be anymore, but he's been doing it for a long time. He does it with a smile on his face. He has fun. He plays hard. He plays it the right way. He's a good human. He's involved with the community. He's a good father. Like that would be the first guy that jumps in my head. And probably because I had the opportunity to be around him a little bit and got to know him, just, what a special human person and player, the way he goes about his business day to day.
So digging into the major leagues, we have obviously some alum from UD and Blue Jays current manager, John Snyder. Is there a relationship and ambassador type of feel that he has with the club nowadays?
So my first year at Delaware as an assistant was Johnny's, I still call him Johnny, John's last year as a player. So I got to coach him 1 year, although I'm probably only 2-3 years older than him. And it was one of those things, like when you're coaching him in the moment, you don't realize it. But a few years later, as his professional playing career is winding down, and he's one of those guys. I think the day he got released, he became a rookie ball manager. Like the Blue Jays saw it, in him as a player. And when I first heard he was managing, I'm like, oh yeah, I can definitely see that. And I had the neat opportunity 2 summers ago. They were playing in Baltimore, and we took a camera crew from UD down, and I got to interview him in the dugout, the morning before a game in Baltimore, and kind of reconnect with him. And, he's been great to communicate with, and he loves Delaware, and, really fond memories of his time at Delaware, and attributes a lot of his knowledge and ability to relate to his players to his time and his coaches at Delaware.
So some other Blue Hens that have become major leaguers, we have the list here, and curious if their relationship with the college still exists right now. Chad Kuhl, Ron Marinaccio, Brandon Walter, James Meeker, and from the past, Kevin Mensch. And a fun fact that we were digging around, Mike Trout's dad, Jeff, played at the University of Delaware as well.
Yes, good one. Jeff, this is where Mike had to get his hit gene. Jeff, if you look up in our record book, like highest career batting average, highest single season batting average, like was a really talented hitter himself. No, good involvement. Chad Kuhl was around a ton this offseason, was a great asset for our pitchers, just to start talking grips and pitch shapes. And, he would start talking to one pitcher, and next thing you know, you'd look up and 15 of them were around him. So he's been awesome. He's Delaware born and raised, right down the road in Middletown, Delaware. So he's been great. Brandon Walter was at our game on Saturday at FAU. He's down in spring training with the Astros and swung by and watched us. So good to see him. He's around. He's a local kid as well from Delaware. And Ron Marinaccio, back to our alumni golf outing, all that stuff. I have not got to meet James Meeker yet. And I don't know, maybe you guys do. I don't know if he's signed with the team yet I would think it would have happened.
He might have got an invite. I could look it up while we chat.
Okay. But he made it to the major leagues last year with the Brewers, and then got released with like 2 weeks left. So I'm not sure what his status is. But Kevin Mensch, I got to know from my previous time at Delaware. We're about the same age. I never coached him, but he's always good for a text when we're on the road going to a field, to tell me about how far of a home run he hit at that field when he was at Delaware, to point out the building in left center. He hit a ball on the roof, like that sort of stuff, like really good sense of humor, and, still follows along. So yeah, those, I think Delaware is one of those schools, like many colleges, where when guys leave, they just have this attraction to the program and the school and good memories, and want to reconnect and give back any way they can. And that's been my experience with those guys.
So just to confirm, Meeker is still a free agent. No invite yet, but I expect he may find some work sooner than later. But just on your own personal resume, some other major leaguers that have to make you proud to see what they're doing that you've coached at other schools: Ian Happ, Nolan Shanuel, and Joey Wendell. Any thoughts on them? And just speaking of when you actually were around when they were, coming through the system.
Yeah, that's like, I've gone from, transition from being a diehard Pittsburgh Pirate fan to now I'm more of a fan of the guys that I coach that are in the big leagues. And that's who I watch. I love Major League Baseball, but I'm going to find one of those guys at night and watch them play, on TV. Nolan Shanuel, like I was saying about Tanner Thatch, Nolan Shanuel was drafted in make sure I have the year right, in 23, played like 20 minor league games and got called up and was the everyday first baseman for the Angels, and had a really good, I don't know if he qualified for it as a rookie, if he played enough games, but had a really good rookie season, played first base every day last year for the Angels, and still talk to Nolan. What a great personality, great baseball player. Ian was out and saw him in Chicago play last year, and try to get out and see him play once a year, and still talk to him, have a good relationship with Ian. Joey Wendell lives actually like 2 miles from me where I am right now, and live right over the border in Pennsylvania, close to where he grew up. So still talk to Joey. The other one, Pedro Pages, was the starting catcher for the Cardinals last year. I think he's slated to be their number 2 catcher this year. Coached him at Florida Atlantic, and last year was his rookie year. And always knew he was on track defensively to catch in the big leagues, and has actually shown some pretty good production and power in the big leagues, where I think he's going to stick around and have a long career.
So Steve mentioned the name Ben Upton before. You may know him from 11.7. They do a great job covering the college game, especially on X and on their podcast as well. We had him on just maybe 2 weeks ago, and one of the questions we asked him as a college baseball fan, as someone who covers it, was as the profile of college baseball seems to increase and get a little more popular, did he think that college coaches may start to attract MLB interest in a similar way to, sometimes some of the biggest college basketball coaches or the biggest college football coaches get some interest at the professional level? He had an interesting take where he said possibly, but then he kind of flipped it and almost said he could see a day where MLB coaches became a little more interested in college jobs. How do you see that whole situation playing out over the next, say, 10 to 15 years?
No, I wonder that too, right? And who knows, but it seems like the jobs are so far off and so different. Like, I can't imagine moving into a major league clubhouse and trying to manage 28 to 30-year-olds, would certainly not be able to do the things we do with college guys. It's just a totally different, I guess, dynamic developmentally and how their careers are handled. So I think it would be incredibly challenging for most college coaches. I'm not going to say all. I'm sure there's some that have a background in professional baseball and understand how to treat and coach major league players. So I think that transition would be really tough. There have been a number of former major league players that have transitioned to become Division I coaches. There's probably Eric Wedge, who was at Wichita State and was a former major league manager, I know made the transition. There have not been many, if any others, that have done it from major league managing. The tough transition, I think, from pro ball for those guys to college is the recruiting piece, right? Like, I don't know that most of those guys, when they get in, understand the amount of hours that are spent on the road, especially in the summer recruiting, and the hours of visits and phone calls. Like, it's a lot, right? And I think, if you're in the mindset of a professional baseball of your day is getting to the field at whatever after lunch and being there till 11 o'clock at night, and then all of a sudden you transition to college and you've got to get home from a game at 11 at night and go watch a high school game the next day and call 6 kids on the phone. I think that lifestyle isn't attractive to a lot of professional baseball people.
Well, with that thought in mind, that makes me think of, it's a different sport, but what were your thoughts on a Bill Belichick going to North Carolina? It shocked me.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, I can't. I know it's a different sport, but I have to ask that question.
No, shocked me as well. I thought for sure he was going to take another NFL job, that he was just going to wait for some place he could win, and jump in and take that team. So that one surprised me. I would certainly think that it has helped North Carolina recruiting, right? Like, who wouldn't want to go play for that guy and learn from him, develop from him, and be better prepared for the NFL and probably be a better draft choice because of it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
So as someone who once was a pitching coach, what are your thoughts on these elbow injuries and what everyone's calling as an epidemic with some of the things we're seeing? And we've, balancing to get the kid the most out of pitchers, try to get them to maximize their production, but also with the scope of trying to protect them from injury. So what are your thoughts on this? And maybe you possibly have a solution from what we're seeing at the major league level.
Yeah. It's obviously a very debated topic, I guess. Not even debated, like, it's a factual topic, Steve,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something we have had to adapt with, where I think in the past you're probably going to average maybe one a year, Tommy John or elbow blowout. And shoot, it's not uncommon now to hear of 4 or 5 guys in a pitching staff in a calendar year blowout. I think the answer, or maybe the problem, I guess, is really simple. It is, you need to throw harder earlier to get recruited to play at the high school level, the travel scene, and certainly in the major leagues. So, and we have seemed to figure out the formula for guys to increase velocity, right? We have indoor facilities all over the country that have specialized in this, where you can go show up there, do their 8 to 10 week program, and you're going to turn around and probably throw 3, 4, maybe 5 miles an hour harder than you did prior to that. And, that's attractive for the kid because it's probably going to help him get a college scholarship or maybe a college guy get drafted. But, the human body many times just isn't ready at a younger age to throw a baseball that fast. The elbow isn't ready to hold that type of pressure. So we're in a bad trend. You asked me for a solution. I don't know how we're going to get one because we as college coaches are always going to want the harder throwers, right? They're more inclined to miss barrels. Professional baseball is always going to want the harder throwers. I wish we could say, hey, we're going to start recruiting guys that don't throw hard because they won't get hurt, but they're going to get whacked around and we're not going to win baseball games nor major league teams. So I guess we're just going to keep chasing velocity and keeping blowing elbows out. I don't know there's any way to stop this. If somebody has a solution, I would like to hear it. I know, we feel like we have, all people do, systems in place to do screenings of, mobility, movement, and, I guess flag when guys are starting to get to the point of they could get injured and start to give them some corrective exercises and some, different things to do. But it's an epidemic, and I think it's going to continue to grow and get worse, unfortunately.
I think it's comparable to the situation in the NFL where you can put safeguards in place for the head-to-head and the head injuries we're seeing and concussion protocol. With NFL and football programs at large are taking it more seriously, as are all sports, obviously, the more we learn about head injuries. But I think there's a certain conversation, some circles around football fans, baseball fans, of what is just natural wear and tear of the game that it is. And I think for pitching, there's always going to be the conversation of trying to put safeguards in place to protect. But at the end of the day, what these pitchers are doing on a daily basis, it's not natural for the arm to go that way. So it's inevitably we're going to have injuries that we're going to have to deal with. And as far as the increase, it might just be, like you said, throwing harder, faster is what's creating this trajectory for some of these pitchers. But what we're seeing is it's almost a rite of passage before getting the major league to get a Tommy John and then be ready to go. It's almost like you just got to get it out of the way, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. I'll go to this. I said 25 years of coaching, and I can remember probably my first 7, 8, 10 years of recruiting. If a kid threw 90 when he was in high school, we would put the gun down because he wasn't going to go to college. He was going to be drafted and play professional baseball. And now it's rare for us to sign a right-hander that doesn't throw 90. It's like, I don't know what the numbers or percentages are, but there are thousands of high school kids more throwing 90 miles an hour now than there were 20 years ago. Like, that's a fact.
I mean, we spent part of this podcast tonight talking about how umpires know they're being judged and analyzed, so they have to be tighter with the strike zone. If it's a tighter strike zone, the guys that are going to be effective are the guys that throw hard and spin the ball. So like you said, I just don't see how you can go in any other direction. The strike zone would have to expand for anything to change strategically on the pitching side. So, and I don't think that's going to happen. It seems to be going the opposite way.
I agree.
And also, we mentioned everyone hitting the ball harder too. Let's add that to the equation as well.
Yeah.
So you add that, it's a perfect mix of, you can't throw because you wouldn't get any guys out at the end of the day. That's what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
So, Coach, you mentioned 25 years of coaching. I saw this video kind of making its way around social media of I don't know what team it was, but they put a big screen right in front of the mound, and they were hitting line drives at the screen where their pitchers were behind it, and they had to kind of react to it, but the ball wasn't actually getting to them. A lot of the commenters were kind of making fun of it as like almost like a useless drill. I don't want to ask specifically about that drill, but in your 25 years of coaching, do you have a favorite drill? Offensively, pitching, it could be anything. And do you have one that you've seen that you just never understood or thought wasn't extremely useful?
Though I guess the one drill, and everybody does this now, is hitting the velocity machine, right? Where we're setting up for the hitters, setting up a pitching machine, throwing high velocity at the top of the zone. And, we know like that swing against that machine, if you set the dials right, is going to work against the best pitchers we face. So we talk about everybody's chasing velocity, everybody's throwing harder, but the hitters are also training better to hit that velocity. So that is I don't know if that's what you're after, Devin, but that's the one thing. Like, if you're like, what's the one thing you're going to do before you go into the weekend? We're going to hit off the machine. Drill, I don't understand. And if any of my hitters or our hitters listen to this, they're going to roll their eyes and probably turn it off. But is flips or front toss. And again, just about everybody does it, where the guy's standing 10, 12 feet in front behind a screen, flipping a ball underhand to the hitter. And I allow our guys to do it, but try to minimize the amount and try to have them flip it to the top of the zone. But to me, like, they're flipping the ball 20, 30 miles an hour on an arc. Like, anybody could step in and look good and have success against it, and that swing doesn't work against, the low 90s velocity that we often see. So that would be and those are two like polar opposite drills, the one that I love and the one that I hate.
So you mentioned before some prospects that made the jump pretty quickly. Nolan Chaniel, as you mentioned, got the jump pretty quick, like 2023, and then straight to the majors, it seems. And also your hometown fan, Paul Skeens, did the same thing. And we're seeing more players jump from the minors to the bigs quicker these days, which inevitably creates the conversation about narrowing the pipeline. You can attribute to the competition in college being vastly better than it's been in years past. Do we owe that to college baseball? Do they deserve credit for creating players that are ready for the major league, and credit to the programs like the one you guys have at UD?
I want to say yes, Steve. I think so, but it's also kind of like, as I was as a youth, like the baseball cards, Stratomatic, Baseball Weekly, like loved Major League Baseball, going to as many Pirate games as I could growing up in Western Pennsylvania. And forever, we would not call guys up till they were like 27, 28 years old. It felt like you had to play forever in the minor leagues. And I often wonder, like, did they have it wrong back then? Were many of those guys ready? And it was just the answer was just, this is how we've always done it, as opposed to what is best. So I always wonder that, like, there was obviously exceptions of the Barry Bonds and Ken Griffey Juniors that were called up as, 20-year-olds or whatever, 19-year-olds. But were many of these other big leaguers that didn't get called up till maybe they were 25, 26, 27, actually ready when they were 21, 22, and we just didn't do it, or Major League Baseball just didn't do it. So I'm going to say, I don't know on that, but probably those guys were ready. It was just, again, not a progressive mindset. But I also do think the level of college baseball, so Paul Skeens in the SEC, the level of hitters he's facing, they're certainly not the same level as professional baseball, but it's comparable probably to the lower levels of the minor leagues, where he's having success chewing up those types of players, and he's ready because his stuff is just so elite. His mindset, his work ethic, his confidence, his focus. He was ready for the big stage at age 21,
And I mean, we look at this, we've had this conversation over and over again with, anyone that will listen, is just about the pipeline. And one of the reasons why college football is so popular is not only the play in the field is at a high level, but you can invest your time as a fan of the NFL for whatever team you're rooting for and watch players that will likely contribute to your team the next year. And if we can find a way to have that be the norm in baseball, where you watch the draft in June, and maybe it's not in June if we shift things around, and you have a player that you can watch through college baseball and then say, hey, I would love the Pittsburgh Pirates to get that player. He could be a guy that I can watch even next year in a uniform. I think the fandom of college baseball changes in that regard.
No, I agree. I definitely agree with that, right? Like, with the reduction, I don't know what it was now, 5-6 years ago, of number of rounds in the draft, there's less minor league teams, and in a way, Division I college baseball, all of college baseball is becoming a little bit closer to the minor leagues because there's a little bit better talent, a little bit older, players. And I certainly agree with that. Like, that's, I think, one of the neat things. And allegedly they may even cut more minor league teams moving forward, that the owners, in the next collective bargaining agreement, may want less minor league teams, which is bad for the sport of baseball, in my opinion, but could be good for college baseball.
So, Coach, you've given us a ton of time here. We like to kind of conclude some of these guest episodes recently with a Mount Rushmore segment based on whatever team we're talking about. So for you, we're going to put you on the spot here a little bit. University of Delaware athletics, all time. It could be players, coaches, 4 people on that Mount Rushmore for you, and this is personal opinion, it doesn't have to be ranking or anything like that, if you were putting 4 people on there, who would it be?
We're not talking baseball, Devin. We're going all sports. Is that what you
All
said?
athletics, all that athletics, yes.
Ooh, I better get this right. Joe Flacco has to be the first one that goes up there, right? Super Bowl MVP and has done so much for the university. I'm going to have to go with Rich Gannon, also a Super Bowl MVP with the Raiders. I'm not going to recall the year, has to go up there. You're probably going to have to put up Tubby Raymond, Hall of Fame college football coach, is going to have to go up there. And while we're on the coach thing, I'm going to go with Bob Hanna, who was the baseball coach for 31 years, I believe. No, longer than that. 36 years maybe at Delaware, won over 1,000 games at Delaware. One of the greatest, he's in the College Baseball Coaching Hall of Fame, one of the legends of coaching college baseball. So that's going to be my 4: Joe Flacco, Rich Gannon, Tubby Raymond, and Bob Hanna.
So I just fact checked it for you over here. 65 to 2000. What's the math on that? That's the years he was coaching active.
35 years. You said 65.
All right, there you go. That's, you talked about it in the opening of the episode about just a premier spot in baseball. College baseball, at least as far as like no turnover as far as the coaching goes. It's fantastic. So it's cool to see. And that's when, a program is growing, when you have the consistency in that, and one of the biggest spots in the program.
Devin, I can't leave out. I got to throw her up there. Elena Deladon.
That was the only one in my head, but I wasn't going to say.
All right, yeah, she's got to be up there. We got to get Elaine up there. She was MVP, I think, at least once, if not multiple times, at the WNBA. So,
well, I got to say, the Mount Rushmore, it's tough because 4 sounds like enough, but anytime we do this with anyone in any category, you got to throw a 5th and sometimes a 6th on like honorable mention. Right. So, yeah, it's a tough one to do.
So you guys can follow Coach here at Coach Mams UD on X. He's posting over there, giving you guys updates on the road trips and following University of Delaware's baseball program. You guys can do that, and make sure you guys check out what the Blue Hens are doing over there and all the good stuff you guys have going on and getting back in the win column. We know you're going to do it very soon. Anything you want to hype up on here, the platform is yours to do so right now.
We already threw the Twitter account out, but if I always have to throw this plug in. If there's any high school baseball players out there listening, particularly in the area, get out and watch us play. If you're out of the area, get out and watch college baseball games. Get on, watch ESPN or ESPN Plus and watch college baseball games. I just think, like we've been talking about, like college baseball is an exciting product to watch and becoming even more exciting. And for those kids that have the aspiration to play college baseball, I think getting out, watching games and seeing the different programs, different levels, and getting a feel for where they may fit into the college baseball world, and also to get them even more excited about the opportunity to play college baseball. So I guess that's the plug I'm going to throw out there, Steve.
I love it. And we thank you so much for joining. We'd love to have you on again and talk maybe about where you guys are mid-season if you're willing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Appreciate any opportunity to sell our program and talk baseball, guys. I appreciate it.
We love it. We'll be back in 1 second when our final. All right. Again, we want to thank Coach Mams for hopping on here and talking all things college baseball. And as promised, we had about an hour-long conversation about Delaware and what they're bringing to the table. And I really enjoyed it, Devin.
No doubt about it. He had some great insight. I mean, you can tell he's been around the game for forever and ever. He could talk about it all day, just kind of knows it in and out. And I got to say, as an alum of Delaware, seeing them off to an 0-3 start, talking to him, you kind of feel better about the whole thing. He's got a kind of a calming presence. And like he said, if there are any high school baseball players that are listening to it and you're wondering about where you're going, I mean, I would at least check it out and have a conversation with Delaware, because I mean, I think the number one important thing for deciding on a program, other than maybe location, is who your coach is going to be, who your manager is going to be, who you're going to be playing under, especially at the college level, because it's more than just the X and O's. They're also trying to teach these guys how to be good humans, how to balance school and the sport. So, yeah, I enjoyed talking to him very much.
So again, I referenced this video when Greg was on here, but this inside the University of Delaware's Blue Hens $64 million baseball facility. I sent a video to you via text. It's about 13 minutes long where people are walking through and checking out the facility. Greg mentioned the nutrition station and everything they're putting into really getting these athletes to peak performance. That couldn't have been there when you were there, right? This has to all be brand new as far as when you were there. Like, can you close your eyes and picture the time you were there? What was the athletic department like? I know you went to the games and you're on campus, but I mean, it's almost night and day from when you were there. It's insane how much they've grown.
Yeah, it's another reminder of how long I've been gone. So thanks for that.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, no, it's all right. But there's nothing that makes you feel so your age than calculating how long you've been out of college and high school. So anyway, but yeah, so I watched not the whole video yet. I tried to watch a little bit before we had to hop on here. And there's definitely some differences. I thought the athletic department was fine, but it's leaps and bounds from what it was back then. Again, Delaware, even though it was the 1AA FCS level, I always feel like it's been a football school for a long time, even though they haven't been Division One, and they will be next year, which is pretty cool. And one of my regrets, looking back as a student, there is not getting to as many athletic events other than some football games as I should have. Part of it was any Delaware people listening, I lived all the way kind of north side of campus on Ray Street and then Prospect Avenue. And I was like the complete other side from where the athletic facilities are. So, and again, in the grand scheme of things, it's, you get over there and it doesn't take too long. But as a college student, it seems like a big deal. So anyway, yeah, to answer your question, huge difference. And it just sounds like they're going to keep on growing. Like, I got excited when he started talking about all the money they've put into just like the pitching side of the game, because that's what's popular now. Like, you hear about Wake Forest all the time in their pitching lab and all the, that's exciting to hear because he readily admitted that you're at a little bit of a disadvantage trying to recruit some of the most talented kids, partly just because of weather. And, the southern kids want to stay somewhere down south, and a lot of the northern kids want to go down south. So to up the ante and to even things out a little bit, it's got to be facilities and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think also conversation always in my brain goes towards the kids right now that are like 4 or 5 that have to choose baseball, that want to play baseball. And I think it's not a Delaware thing to solve, but programs like them existing, making it cool to go there, and the uniforms pop and the colors look great. There's something about that. And I distinctly remember when Oregon first kind of took off as a football program. And obviously I'm not following college football as closely, but you couldn't help but notice that they were the trendsetters as far as how uniforms looked. And I feel like they were trailblazing that in regard. And it might sound trivial, but it felt like players were committing to Oregon because they wanted to wear the awesome duck uniforms that they had there. Now you watch other college teams go down the list. Probably any college team has, aside from like the Alabamas of the world, that is just tradition, almost like the New York Yankees uniform. You're attracting the young player by the way they're going to look in the uniform. But there's got to be a way to attract these one sport athletes to get them to play baseball and not commit to the basketballs and the footballs. And I don't know what the answer is to that, but it starts with the popularity of baseball, making people want to watch it. If kids are watching college baseball and caring about college baseball, chances are they're going to want to put on a uniform and play college baseball.
Yeah, and you mentioned moving to Conference USA. That's exciting. I mean, it might be a little daunting at first. They're going to be, number one, the travel is going to be eye-opening for the program. But some of the competition they're going against for the first few years, it might be a little bumpy. Who knows? I mean, Dallas Baptist is in that conference, and they were ranked as the number 1 mid-major in the country. I know they just took a loss either last night or the day before. But the other side of that is I do also think it eventually maybe helps recruiting, knowing that, oh, we're going to these places and we're going to be on some bigger stages. Like, that's pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing what those changes bring as well.
Yeah, I agree. The answer to that was very interesting because the stuff that we assume would be the change, obviously the higher level competition, more exposure, but that's something that on his end, of course, he's thinking because he's not going to be home. He has the scheduling changes. He's on a plane instead of a bus, and that does change the spotlight, but it becomes more in skew of, in a lot of ways for the players, obviously you want to be on a bigger stage, but it also prepares them to be a better professional athlete because you're used to being on a plane, you're used to traveling, you're used to being in the air in a hotel room, etc. And I think it helps recruiting. And I think although these athletes are going to be, going long distances, you mentioned playing in New Mexico. Like, of course, that's a huge difference than just a 6-hour bus ride. But I think that's attractive because it does mimic sort of the sport professional schedule that if they do aspire, and most of these guys on these teams probably aspire to eventually make a living. I'm sure all of them have the dreams, whether realistic or not, to play professional sports. That's what you're eventually going to be aspiring to. So for me, looking at that, I'd be like, hell yeah, we get to go play in New Mexico. Hell yeah, we get to go to these new cities and play in front of these fans. So it's gonna be interesting to see where they're at, and if eventually that NIL stuff that he says is not consequential right now, if that becomes a big deal going forward in the future with their shift over to Conference USA.
Yeah, well, as the college baseball game grows and the audience grows, and maybe some of the production value gets better over these next 5 to 10 years, I think the profile of every single college raises. And then some of these mid majors that aren't as affected by NIL, little by little, probably will be. I also think there's probably going to be some changes in the NIL system over the next few years because there's very little overlook or oversight, I guess you could say, as this has started. So, yeah, who knows? I mean, we're going to go for a lot of twists and turns in the college games, and hopefully Delaware athletics, they're moving on up, it sounds like, and it might take them a little bit to adjust. But if I'm sitting in front of the TV in 10 years and watching either Delaware football or baseball on TV and they're holding their own, that's exciting as an alum and as a fan of the teams.
So if you guys want to support the show, please follow us on X and on Instagram at TablesettersPod on both platforms. We are quickly approaching 2,000 followers on Twitter, which has been fantastic to see. And also, you want to support us further, go to dugoutmugs.com and use code TS10 at checkout to save 10% on your order. Devin will be posting a video fairly soon. We received our little love package from Dugout Mugs, and thank you to them.
Oh, yeah.
We are a proud affiliate. Devin's going to, for those on audio, Devin is reaching back there for his Met accoutrement that he received from Dugout Mugs, the beautiful handcrafted Met logo over there with all the boroughs and the bridge
hollowed
out, and
very nice.
Get a nice
Good
beer
quality.
out of that. It's going to be nice in the middle of the summer. And you got a nice bottle opener with the Met logo on there as well, right?
Well, dude, yeah, this is what they're known for here. But this thing is sick. Like, just looks like a baseball, right? It's half a baseball, and you got that little bottle opener. It's the perfect. That's how you want to do it, right? So yeah, I mean,
you gotta literally open it and put it right into the Dugout Mug right there.
Absolutely. There's a lot more where that came from. I feel like I saw these guys like years ago just start with the Dugout Mugs. It was like, oh, that was kind of cool. Never thought anything of it, but they've definitely grown, and there's lots of different products on there. But yeah, it's the kind of thing where, like, if you like what we do, it's a great way to support us and also get something for yourself at the same time, or something for someone else that you think would like it. So if you guys do that, we really appreciate it, and let us know so we can give you some kind of shout out as well.
Oh, absolutely. Again, just want to give a quick shout out to all those that listened and enjoyed the Jarrett Sandler interview that we did earlier this week. As Devin mentioned at the beginning, this was a 3-episode week, so it's not always the case here, but we try our best to put out the best content. It just so happened it lined up that we had 2 guests and a regular episode that was jam-packed full of news. So pretty much in total, I think we had 5 hours of content that we gave to you guys this week. The Jarrett Sandler interview is up there on YouTube. It's on every audio platform. I would say today, just looking at the Instagram account, I think we got 25 new followers that were all Rangers fans. And that reel that you posted that Jarrett was nice enough to collab with us on with his extensive following has gained us a little traction here. Good conversation. There was some good comments on videos. So as we approach the baseball season, it feels like there's a buzz in the air that people are excited to talk baseball. And newsflash, guys, we never left. We've been talking baseball since the weather became really cold. Everyone's enjoying football. We've been here talking all things news because it's all things baseball all the time.
Yeah, we've been here. It's like that meme of Will Smith and Fresh Prince when everyone's gone and all the furniture's gone. Like, where did everybody go? We've been here the whole time. We never left. Everyone else moved their stuff. Not everyone, but a lot of people moved their stuff out. And also, let us know. I mean, we're going to keep this going here. This is our first college team specific episode. And the cool thing about that is if we want to keep that going, there are so many teams to choose from. The pool of teams is way bigger than MLB, which means the pool of people that we could potentially talk to is way bigger as well, whether it be coaches, media, ADs, players. That's what we're going to want as well. But for MLB, we have 13 teams left. We have not done a team-specific or team-centric episode for yet. This is the list: Yankees, which is surprising, being that Steve's the Yankee fan here. I mean, maybe because we feel like we can talk about them a lot on our own, but it would be cool to have someone that's close to the team. Yankees, Rays, Twins, White Sox, Phillies, Braves, Nationals, Marlins, Brewers, Cardinals, Cubs, Giants, Rockies. So if any of those teams stand out to you and you want to let us know who and maybe exactly the person that you think we should talk to as well, let us know. And if there's a college team, if you liked this episode but you want to hear us kind of do another one on another college team, I know Steve is going to be trying to track someone down from Campbell because that's his squad.
Chris Marks and I are going back and forth. He's a busy dude, but Chris Marks will be on here soon enough. He promised he'd be on here. They'll send me some Campbell merch, but the head coach of the Fightin' Camels, dude, he's going to be on here. Chris Marks will be here soon. I can't guarantee the date because he's traveling all over the place, but my dude, Chris Marks, will be on here.
All right. We got it. All right. So look out for that. But so just let us know what you want to see and we'll try to make it happen.
Yeah, and as far as the other teams out here, for whatever reason, when I first started the baseball Twitter, you guys can check it out, @SGroundballTS on Twitter. I was followed extensively by multiple Marlins accounts. So, and I guess one led to the other, and I have about like 27 Marlin accounts that I follow. So I'm going to do some research about who's out there because I think those that are covering the Marlins in full right now, you deserve all the praise. Even though the team is probably going to be the worst in Major League Baseball, I would say there's a couple teams out there, but the Marlins de facto probably the worst team in the league this year. There's a lot of conversation to have about the Marlins because that's how intricate the stories in baseball are. Even the team has done nothing in the offseason. They continue to struggle and not spend free agency and struggle with attendance. There's still so much meat on the bone to potentially do an hour-and-a-half episode on just the Marlins. That's how great baseball is right now, Devin.
Well, you said probably the worst team in the league. Did the White Sox get relegated to AAA?
Dude, I don't know, man. I just feel like the Marlins are going to be the worst. I mean, maybe I should make an on-air bet. I feel like the Marlins are going to have more losses this year.
I mean, you honestly could be right because they got rid of other guys. But
look at their depth chart. Everyone go right now to Fangraphs and look, not even projections. Just look at their starting lineup this year and just have yourself a nice little wry smile to yourself if you root for another team.
Yeah, maybe we'll make a bet. I'm gonna double check the rosters before I commit to it. But we'll
revisit. We'll revisit.
Okay.
So we appreciate you guys listening to this again. Follow us @Tablesetters Pod on both X and Instagram. We'll be back next week, maybe with a guest, maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times, maybe 1 time. Who knows? But we'll be back and talk to you after a while.